Hey y'all, so today I'm just going to do a hair care video on knotless braids. As many people know, I have actually removed box braids as a service and strictly will only be doing knotless braids. So I thought it would be just good to do a little video about knotless braids so you guys can fully understand the reasons behind me removing box braids as a service. So I just want to start off with what is knotless braids, because surprisingly, still to this day, a lot of people don't actually know what knotless braids are, or the difference, shall I say, between knotless braids and box braids. So knotless braids is essentially the same as box braids, but without the knot. It's in the name, knotless braids. So essentially what it is, the client would have their natural hair plaited at the root first, and then the stylist would feed in the braiding hair to that plait to achieve the desired length and thickness. So eliminating that knot at the root. So essentially that is what knotless braids are. It's the braid without a knot at the root. So it's pretty much the same as box braids. So the first benefit of knotless braids would be that they're tension free. Because there's not a knot at the root, there's no sort of tension pulling on the scalp. So it's leading to them being actually pain free as well. So the second benefit of knotless braids would be that they are lightweight, because less braiding hair is actually used to achieve the desired length and thickness. So the braids themselves don't actually feel heavy. So the third benefit of knotless braids would be that they're not bulky. Because there's not a knot at the root, the braids actually sit flatter. So it actually gives more of a seamless look and more of a natural look as well. The fourth benefit of knotless braids would be that once you've had them installed, so once you've had your hair done, they're easily manipulated. So you can actually put your hair up, half down, that very same hour that you've just had your hair done. You don't have to wait for your hair to settle or anything like that, because there's no knot at the root, there's no tension pulling on your scalp, and the hair itself actually has flexibility to move up, down, left, right, to an angle, diagonal, whichever way you want it to move. So the fifth benefit of knotless braids, I would say, is no breakage, simply because there isn't a knot at the root. So there's no tension on your scalp for the hair to break, which is a thing that's commonly associated with box braids. Traction alopecia is commonly linked to box braids because of that tension that box braids can cause. With that knot that's constantly at your root. I mean, even if your stylist doesn't braid right on your edges or doesn't braid that tight, they still have to create a knot to achieve the style, which inevitably is putting tension on your root. And then if you like to put your hair up, half down, all of that, you're then further adding the tension, which is why traction alopecia is common with box braids. Okay, so the sixth reason, which I believe is a benefit of knotless braids, is that I think they last longer, and that's sort of backed up with my clients' feedbacks as well. So with that said, the reason why I think they last longer is because you're not going to lose a braid. You're not going to walk down the street, flick your hair, and then all of a sudden a braid is gone, like with box braids. The reason why is because your hair is plaited first, and then the braiding hair strands is then fedded into that individual plait. The braid in hair is interlocked. It's not gonna be slipping, whereas traditional box braid is just one massive knot at the root. So as your hair grows out, it is then prone to slipping and sliding, which is why you then flick, lose a braid. So with knotless braids, you can flick your hair all you want and you ain't gonna lose a braid. And the last benefit that I think is just a blatant benefit of knotless braids is that they're stylish. Like, traditional box braids is, in its word, traditional. Like, it's old school. Like, knotless braids is new school, it's trendy, it's popular, it's more preferred. They look nicer. Like, they're actually more aesthetically pleasing, in my personal opinion anyhow. They're more aesthetically pleasing. And yeah, like, knotless braids all the way. Like, don't get me wrong, box braids are gorgeous, but knotless braids are just the one. There is two cons or negatives, if you want to call them, for knotless braids. The first one is typically they are more expensive than traditional box braids, and depending on the stylist, the area you're from, etc., it could be £10 to £20 more than traditional box braids. And the other con that personally isn't a con for me as a stylist, but some other stylists, it can take longer than box braids. So in terms of the time length, longer, an hour to 2 longer than traditional box braids. Me personally, I think that's the only sort of negatives for knotless braids. I have seen a couple of trending negatives about knotless braids, which I just think is quite funny, and it just comes back to self-love really. But a lot of people say that they don't like knotless braids because there isn't a knot there to hide their big forehead. So because obviously, as I was saying, there's a benefit of knotless braids, they sit flat. So these people who believe they have big foreheads don't like the fact that knotless braids sit flat, meaning their foreheads look more pronounced. But that's really not a con. Like, just love yourself, honey. Embrace your forehead. Like, Riri has a 5 head and she's buff. Like, embrace that 5 head, honey. Get your knotless. I really hope you guys found this video useful, informative, and can now have a better understanding as to why I have removed box braids as a service and will only be doing knotless braids. If you have any questions, just drop them in the comments below. You can also DM me. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I'm gonna go now. Peace.